In this episode of the Happy Diabetic Kitchen podcast, welcome to Makaha Mangoes. It's all about mangoes today. We'll be talking with Mark Suiso, an amazing mango farmer from the Makaha Valley directly in Hawaii. So stay tuned. It's going to be an amazing moment all about mangoes. Hello everyone, I am Chef Robert Lewis, the Happy Diabetic. Welcome to the internet's most delicious cooking podcast. I'm here in the kitchen getting ready to explore a healthy diabetic lifestyle. I want to take the mystery out of healthy cooking, explore some amazing foods, and my diabetic journey with all my successes and all my challenges. Let me help you live your best happy diabetic lifestyle. So welcome to the kitchen. And if you're new to the show, I am so happy you're here. Hello everyone, I'm Chef Robert Lewis, the Happy Diabetic. Why? Well, I want to share my journey living with type 2 diabetes for over 3 decades. Why? To help you live and navigate your best happy diabetic life. Why? So you can be healthy, have better glucose control, and eat in a lifestyle way that's sustainable and not full of fad diets. Why, you ask? So you can learn to enjoy the foods you love in moderation and learn to kick up your chef skills to a high level. Why? So you can live your best happy diabetic life. Feel free to join me on my journey. Where? At happydiabetic.com. You'll find all the podcast links there, kitchen tips, recipes, cookbooks, articles of interest. All my social links you'll find there, and you can become part of our amazing Facebook groups and Instagram happenings. So, how can I help you? I want you to live your best happy diabetic lifestyle. And today we've got an amazing show. Coming up is an interview with Mark Suiso from Makaha Mangoes, and we're going to take the mystery out of buying, eating, and we'll talk everything in between mangoes. So sit back, enjoy. We will be right back. Okay, everybody, as promised, it's time for our interview with Mark Suiso. Mark and his wife, Candy, own Makaha Mangoes in Hawaii, and we're about to learn everything you've always wanted to know about mangoes. So let's get right into it. I can't tell you how excited I am about our interview guest today. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Mark, welcome to the podcast. But before we get started, I got to ask you a quick question. Are you ready to get happy?
Oh, always.
The mango is called the king of fruits. Today on the pod, we have Mark Suiso, the king of mango farmers in Hawaii. And Makaha Mangoes is your farm, and it's become really a source of pride and passion for the owners, Mark and Candy Suiso. Today, the farm grows many different varieties. Some Mark planted or grafted, others left by his father's patient hands that realized mangoes were the golden crop of the future. So, Mark, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here today. Mark, why don't you fill in the blanks? Tell us a little bit more about you.
So, yes, I'm here in Hawaii. We have our family farm called Makaha Mangoes. And I thought as I was growing up is that everybody had a mango tree in their yard. And as I moved on in my life, I found that that was less and less so. And what was somewhat alarming to me is that it was increasingly less so. So as people got a place to stay, they didn't put any energy into having a fruit tree in the yard. and they relied on other people to provide the mangoes and the fruit that came from their property, from someone else's property. And I just thought, no, that's just not the right way to do things. And I've always gone by the thing is you need to have a fruit tree in your yard or you have no soul. And where I live, mango is an easy crop to grow. Mangoes like a lot of sun. They like a little bit of airflow, maybe an occasional rainy period here and there, and everything else is great. Now, if you don't have a lot of sun, then you can't grow mangoes. But where I'm at, we're blessed, and so mangoes are an easy thing to grow. So we've been at this for as long as I've been around, and I've been trying to encourage other people to grow mango trees. If you have a little bit of sun, you can grow mango. If you don't have a lot of sun and it's not that warm, then you can't. So out in Iowa, well, sorry, you'll have to come to Hawaii.
Mark, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a grandpa, you're a banker, you're a good guy. And so how did you really get started in this? Did you just wake up one morning and your dad said, here you go, son? How did all this get started for you?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I grew up with the idea that you have fruit trees in your yard. And in our case, mango was the dominant fruit. And that's pretty much the case here in Hawaii as well. Most of the older properties, people would grow a mango tree, and that would be a major part of growing up here in Hawaii is mango season, and people would be picking mangoes, and it'd be a big part of our lifestyle. That was the case in the past. It's not so much the case now, and that's what got me going. And people would always say, well, I got a friend that's got a mango tree. And what was happening is there were less and less people with a mango tree and more people relying on someone else to get the mango tree. So I felt someone had to lead the charge. And so that was me. And so I've been advocating, getting a mango tree in your yard. And, it's a great thing when you have fruit coming out of your property. This is a great year. And so all of a sudden everybody wants to be my friend because they want mangoes from me. And it's just a great experience to have. There's nothing beats having, a fruit tree coming into production and you picking a fruit right there in your yard. I'm looking out the window right now as we're speaking, and I'm looking at these mangoes in a tree, and it makes me happy.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Mark, for all the happy diabetics who are listening today, how would you describe the taste of a mango? If you've never eaten one, what's the flavor like?
Well, with mango specifically, it's a subtropical fruit. So it comes from areas where there is a lot of sun. The fruit, you could slightly compare it to a peach, a really ripe peach. And with mango, nothing beats the tree ripened fruit. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they're not able to get the tree ripened fruit. They'll have to get it from a store. And a lot of the fruits are picked a little on the green side and hope to ripen a little bit in the transit. And sometimes it's been a month or so since they've left the tree, and it's not going to quite have the same flavor as a tree ripened fruit. But it's much like when I do these taste tests, and we do these real fancy taste tests, much like people might have a wine tasting and other types of tastings, and then they get to taste a connoisseur would be able to taste all the nuances in a mango. So a mango's got a little bit of if a ripe mango will have a certain amount of a sweetness to it, and they all are, but then they got this little mid flavor and then a nice finish where it's somewhat like a peach. Some of them have a little bit of an acid to it, but to me the best mangoes are the ones that that flavor lingers, and so maybe a minute or so after tasting it, you can still taste that rich taste, and it's not just sweet. It's got a little bit of an acid. It's got a little bit of there's one mango that I like eating a lot now, and I call it a ratatouille effect. It takes me back to my childhood. And the days that I had a really nice ripe mango. For us here in Hawaii, it's the thing is that you spend a day on the beach and you have a cooler there with some ripe mangoes in it. You come out of the salty water, and then they're eating just munching into a ripe juicy mango, and there's nothing like it.
Awesome. So, Mark, when I go down to my local grocery store,
Yeah.
Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, whatever the grocery store, my listeners, and they see all the mangoes, can you
Yep.
give us any tips on how best to select the best, ripest one?
Yeah. Well, that's a challenge for a lot of people. One thing is they do have the National Mango Board as a website, and I think you can post that later, Robert. And what's
I am.
interesting
I'm going
about
to link
that,
it in the show notes.
great, because what it'll do is if it'll pick up your zip code and it'll tell you what stores are in the area that have mangoes. Now, there's a number of different varieties of mangoes that are being exported into various places throughout the U.S. and internationally, of course. I think the best thing, the closer you are to the tree, the better the quality of the fruit. So that's something to take a look at. So if you come here to Hawaii during mango season, you'll probably get the best tasting mangoes, or anywhere in the world where the mangoes are going to be ripe. But if you're going to your local grocery store, you're going to want to talk to the produce manager there and try to get a little bit of a story on where those mangoes came from, and how long has it been there. If you're looking at it, ideally you'd like to see something that's got some nice color to it. It's attractive to you because of the color. Not all varieties will have a lot of color to it, but that's majority of the mangoes that have a nice color will be somewhat appealing to people. That doesn't mean that a mango that doesn't have a nice color not going to taste as good, but the odds are against you if you do that. The mangoes that have been in transit for a while often will not have a lot of nice fruity aroma to it. A nice tree ripened mango will have a nice aroma to it, and it's just attractive to you. I think we're kind of hardwired to eat ripe fruit, and it just comes through our sensory. Maybe there's some pheromone in there that attracts you to it. But I think for most of us, if we're at a grocery store far away from a ripe mango, you're going to look for some color. You're trying to get a story from the produce manager. You're going to want to see if you can get them to do a little sample for you. That'll be great. You would want a mango that's going to have a little bit of flavor to it. If you cut it open, the flesh, some of them will have a lighter color, some will have a darker color. Generally speaking, the darker colored flesh will have more of a robust flavor to it. The lighter colored flesh usually is not going to have as much flavor. That's not always the case, but that's often an indicator. Some of them will be a little bit firmer than others. Some will be a little softer than others, but that doesn't necessarily mean the flavor is going to be different. So that's not always the case. Right. I would say you're going to have a little bit of tartness, especially if it was on the greener side, a little bit of firmer if it's on the greener side. As it ripens, and hopefully it ripens well, then you'll start to get a little bit more of a it'll be sweeter. You'll be able to get a little bit of a lingering mango type taste to it. Not that much unlike a really ripe peach, but it can, with some of these, it can be a much richer flavor. I think it's somewhat challenging if you're not near a tree ripened fruit, though. Unfortunately, that's something you're going to have to deal with. I think for a lot of people, if you're not near a really ripe fruit and you're dealing with mangoes that have been sitting for a while, they tend to be a little firmer. You can cut them up into cubes. There'll be a little color there, and there'll be a little bit of an acidity to it. It goes well with, if you're preparing it, there are a number of recipes that people do to kind of bring them back to life, and they'll add a bit of orange. Works really well to bring in some more flavor to it. You don't necessarily have to add any more sugar to it. Often there's enough sugar already in the fruit itself. Again, the riper they are, the sweeter it's going to be. I know it's a long answer there, so sorry, Robert.
No, that's okay. No, it's great. In my research for this podcast, Mark and we spoke a couple weeks ago, and he sent me on a mission to go find some mangoes. So I went to 4 different stores, Aldi's. I went to a Whole Foods. I went to a Trader Joe's, and I found mangoes of all different ripe varieties, mostly from either Peru, Mexico, South America. So, Mark, you can't get Hawaiian mangoes, correct? In the States.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of regulations with the Department of Agriculture. There's a lot of bugs like mangoes as well as people do. So bugs aren't things that we want to spread all around the
Yeah.
world. And so unfortunately here in Hawaii, we do have a lot of bugs here, and we don't want to send those bugs over to other places in the country. And so there's a
Right.
restriction on shipping of fresh mango. However, what you can get, and that happens all over the world now, is you're going to get prepared fruit. So you have frozen fruit, you have jams and jellies, you have dried product, and those you can find all over the place. And I will say there's a number of dried products that are really, really good. They have a lot of flavor, and to me, in some ways, they might even taste better than you trying to get quote unquote a fresh fruit from your local grocery store if you're far away from a tree.
Yeah.
So I would suggest trying to get
Interesting.
a preserved product, either frozen or jams or a dried product, and that might be more fun.
So, Mark, where are most mangoes grown in the world? And what's the growing season?
Yeah, so mangoes are this is the story I often tell people. It's the story of the mango, and mangoes are what we call a subtropical fruit. There's the tropical world where everything is hot and humid all the time, and there's the subtropical world where things are sunny some of the time and rainy some of the time, and really hot and sometimes, and maybe a little cooler, maybe get down to around 60 degrees. I know that's not really cold for you, but that's cold for the subtropical world. So it gets down below 60 degrees, and that's what we would call the subtropical world. And that's a big world. Most mangoes came originally from two locations. They either came from India, and India is a big place. There's northern India and southern India, and that northern India and southern India are two big differences between the mangoes that come from that area. But that's generally the round mangoes. They tend to be those types of mangoes tend to be a little sweeter, and they're eaten more often ripe, and that's the India, and they tend to be on the round side. The other source of mangoes originally is the Southeast Asian countries, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, those areas, and those mangoes tend to be more elongated. And as time went on and they mixed together with each other, we get a whole bunch of varieties. And there's literally thousands and thousands of varieties of mangoes. And so as they travel around the world, it's, the environment. So if you got somewhat of a subtropical environment, you could grow mangoes. So mangoes are found in Australia, they're found in Florida, they're found in Texas, Mexico, throughout Central America, down into Peru, Brazil, Israel, Africa, Hawaii, Philippines, Australia. I think I said that. There's, anywhere you've got quote unquote a subtropical environment, you could be growing mangoes. Now, that's the growing environment. The other thing that goes on with where mangoes grow is based on the palate of the people. So what I find characteristically, mangoes in India, they're not that interested in the appearance of the mango. They just want to make sure it's really sweet. And boy, are those mangoes from India really sweet. They're not the prettiest mangoes, but they are generally the sweetest mangoes. Whereas in Southeast Asia, they're not that concerned about the sweetness. They often eat their mangoes green. In fact, I was just in the Philippines. People prefer eating a green mango to a ripe mango.
Interesting.
And a green mango is a little bit like a green apple. You could, most of your green apple recipes could be applied to a green mango. And they like it there. Now in Australia, I tell people they eat Vegemite over there. And so they're not that interested in the sweet mango, but they want a mango with some character. And I'll just emphasize the word character. And Australian mangoes tend to have character. I'll tell you that. Mangoes from Florida, there's a lot of mangoes that came out of Florida. People put a lot of energy into collecting mangoes throughout that area. And then they've scattered it throughout the Caribbean. And generally speaking, Florida mangoes tend to be pretty. They tend to have a nice floral perfume to them. They tend to be really mild tasting, not a lot of flavor character, although some might disagree with me with that. But I would say, generally speaking, Florida mangoes are pretty. They have a nice floral character, mild tasting. And that's the thing with mangoes. Now, throughout Asia, like, we hear about these mangoes in Japan that cost $100 a piece. And they are pretty mangoes. They're perfect. They're nice and red, and they actually put reflectors around the mango so they get a nice even tan all the way around them. And so there's a lot of energy that they put into the appearance of those mangoes. And yeah, they're expensive. I was just in Japan on a stopover. They make a mango shake over there that was at 5,800 yen. That's a little over $30 for a mango shake. They had a strawberry shake right alongside of it. It was half the price. So people were paying double the price for a mango, half the price for a strawberry shake. And that's yeah. So people go crazy over mangoes in different parts of the country, and they all have their own flavor profiles that they like. And here in Hawaii, we get a mix of all kinds of people. So we have a mix of all kinds of mangoes. And generally speaking, we like our mangoes a little on the bigger side. We kind of mix mangoes between different characters that we're used to. A Florida variety and a Indian variety are the dominant ones here. But people create varieties all the time. And I've been creating new varieties. We have one that we named after my dad that tastes a little bit like an orange. So we've got these. You know how you have these wine snobs out there where they're really picky about their different types of wines? We're getting like that with mangoes now. So people will taste the different varieties. And
sure.
And it's just not the variety and a real connoisseur, it's not just a variety. They're talking about the Appalachia where, what was the growing environment and what was the season and was it picked at a certain time. And I've had a number of people where we're doing these mango tastings and they can tell you where this mango came from and where that mango came from. It's more than just a variety. In fact, that's just 1/3 of the factor. The other factor is where was the growing environment and what was the growing style. And they can tell the difference. But that's probably the 1%ers, I'd say.
Yeah. I even noticed when I was buying these mangoes here recently, like grapes, they have so many interesting names. Like I bought champagne mangoes.
Yeah.
Half the fun for me was trying and tasting all the different varieties.
Yeah. Okay. So, those varieties, they will, that's a marketing thing. So they will come up with these different varieties. Now, in terms of the nutritional aspect of it, I think it's somewhat debatable, but I'm just wondering, is there a big nutritional difference between a green mango and a tree ripened mango? I think there's a big difference in the flavor, but does that translate into the nutritional side? I'm not sure. Now, if you check the literature, you'll see that mangoes have a high source of vitamin A, high source of vitamin C. I think the surprising thing for a lot of people is the potassium is very high. There's potassium. People keep thinking about bananas for potassium, but I think mangoes have even more potassium than bananas do. For the diabetics, the sugar, a lot of the sugar on mangoes, I have tree ripened mangoes that can get up close to 25 and 30% sugar. And these are natural sugars. They're not added to it.
Right.
And there are people here in Hawaii that they have to be very cautious. Unfortunately, they can't eat a whole mango. There's just too much sugar on it. So they'll just have a taste of it. And that's really, that's good because now that mango lasts a little longer. So they get half a mango today and half a mango tomorrow. Now they got 2 days of mangoes instead of one.
Sure.
So that's not a bad deal.
For me, Mark, it's everything in moderation, right? So a good dietitian that I work with a lot recommends 3/4 cup serving of mango, which is only about 70 calories. Super high in fiber. And like you said, it's got like just about 20 different essential vitamins. So mangoes really are almost like a super fruit. They're like so good for you. And like so many diabetics are afraid of the sugar component. But Mark, like you said, it's natural sugar. It's not added sugar. And again, everything in moderation. That's the key.
The sugar, I don't know if you could taste the difference on those mangoes that you got, Robert. Some were sweeter than others, I would imagine.
They were. Some were sweet, some were tart. Yeah, I could.
And the texture, the big thing with mangoes, sometimes the mouthfeel is really kind of fun. Some of them might be a little crunchy. Some of them, they're a little chewier than others. You might even taste the fiber in
Right.
some of them. And then to me, a good mango, you'll be able to taste it, right out, you don't, it
Yeah.
has a long finish is what I would describe. And I don't know if you were able to experience that on those mangoes you had.
I experienced all of that. And it was super interesting. I think your description of a peach-like fruit with the fibrousness to it, I think is a perfect combination. It's a really good way, but it's super unique. If you've not ever had a mango, when this podcast is over, get in your car, go to the grocery store, grab one. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And in the show notes of the podcast today, I've included a really good video on how to cut a mango and some of the nutritional facts. And from the website that Mark was referring to, I've also linked that in there.
There are people that will actually chew on the skin. There are some people there's a lot of there's some resinous and oils inside of the skin that people like. So I've had craft beer makers want the skins of the mango so they can get those nuances in that beer. And I've had people making chutneys and people making rice pilafs and stews, and they're using the skin. A lot of chili recipes, if you go back to the origin of a lot of, curry recipes, a lot of curry recipes, if you go back to the old curry recipes, they'll use mango in their mix. And I believe a lot of it was using the skins because they want those essential oils. Now, one of the cautions that comes up is there are people that are allergic to mangoes. And, it's part of the sumac family, and that's your poison ivies and such. So there are people that have some allergy to these things and that are sensitive to it. So if you're eating the skins, you're picking up more of that risk of an allergenic reaction than you would be if you're just eating the fruit. And some people are so sensitive they can't get near the fruit. So that's something to be cautious about.
If you're thinking about eating mangoes and you're just not sure because of the sugar, I'm just here to tell you that it can be part of a healthy and happy diabetic lifestyle way of eating, everything in moderation. And I would seek out your local registered certified dietitian, seek some advice, but don't not enjoy the foods that you love because of this diabetic disease. Manage the way you eat and eat responsibly. So Mark, let me ask you this question. You're an expert. How do you like to eat mangoes?
Robert, you hit on something that I think should resonate. And the point you brought up is you went and got a number of different varieties, and you went ahead and you looked at the names and you cut them up into little pieces, and you kind of savored the taste of each one of them. So you didn't just go there and just kind of gorge on a whole bunch of fruit. You just
That's exactly right.
And you cut up little pieces of it, and you savored the little pieces of them. And then you can pick up on all those little nuances, and it's fun because you're picking up on, what does it initially taste like? And it reminds me of this when I'm chewing out. So it might take you a minute or so just to kind of sample one mango. And then you got I would say maybe at least 3 different varieties. And then you go through that. And one of the things that I like to do is I'll grab a number of different varieties that I've never seen before, or I'll find this one obscure mango that's off of this one tree. And I'll sit down with my wife and some of the family, and we'll sit there and we'll cut up that mango. And that might be an event that might last us maybe 15 or 20 minutes, just kind of creating, and it creates a whole different environment of discussion and talk. And the funny thing about it is, there might be 4 or 5 of us sitting there, and one person likes that mango, one person's like this mango, and the other person likes that mango. And that conversation just goes on and on. So you can go into hours of having fun with that. So, if you haven't had these before, these new experiences are fun. I mean, you had mentioned this thing about grapes. They got these crazy names on grapes. So let's go and try that. And the key word is try. So little pieces of it. And I always tell people the ripe mango in my hand is the best tasting mango. That's my favorite.
Right. And Mark, the 4 different mangoes that I bought, they all were a little bit different. That, like you said, Mark, that is the fun of eating mangoes. So let me ask you this. We want to know a little bit about you personally, Mark. So what's your earliest food memories? Like when you were growing up, what are some of your early food memories from your mom or your dad that were some of your favorite foods? Doesn't have to be mango related.
Well, I grew up I'd have to say my earliest memories is just going out in the backyard and climbing up the tree and eating a mango out of the tree. We would, we first thing we'd do when we get up in the morning is we'd run out there in the yard and we'd find something to eat off the tree. We'd be eating. I remember picking mulberries off a tree and just eating those, and I remember sitting up in trees and eating mangoes. I remember going down into the beach and just kind of walking around to the tide pools and finding different types of seaweeds and little crabs and shells that we would cook and eat. And, so I've always felt food came from the yard. And I've always enjoyed doing that.
Awesome.
That's as far as back as I can remember doing it. And I do it with the grandkids all the time. We do these. My granddaughter, we have a little herb garden. And I remember as a, God, she had to be under one. And I would be picking a basil leaf and I'd crush it and put it in front of her and let her smell it. And then I'd crush a mint leaf and let her smell that. And, she's pretty good about. She's one of my discerning mango tasters now. She'll say whether this is a good mango or not a good mango. But I think, love it. Yeah, that's been a great thing. It's not the prepared food that I remember a lot. It's the stuff that's right there out there in the yard.
So, Mark, I know that you're a part of a group who's advocating and supporting locally grown foods in Hawaii. Can you maybe just chat a little bit about that? Because if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of been lost over the generations, yes?
I would agree. Yeah, well, when I grew up, everyone had a fruit tree in the yard. And like you said, my fondest memories as a child is just going out in the yard and picking things. And there's, that used to be the thing, not so much now. Cost of land here is very, very expensive. And so whatever bits and pieces of land people have, they want to try to maximize the house part of the yard. And to the detriment of the yard part of the yard, and then you hear the excuse that, I don't have room. I don't have room, and I think that's more of an excuse. You don't need a lot of space. In fact, there's a lot of people growing things in little apartment buildings on the deck of their apartments, and they've got some fantastic herb gardens and I see these little pots with citrus trees inside of them, and they got these culinary limes and culinary lemons coming off of it, and they're using the zest of this stuff in almost all of their food. And that's a great spike to a lot of stuff. So, we've been trying to show examples of that. And there's a couple of programs that are encouraging it, but I find success begets success. So what we try to do is get a few people in the neighborhood with some success with a garden and a fruit tree, and next thing you know, the neighbors next door start to copy them, and the neighbors next door copy them. And we've done a couple of mango festivals, and I may rekindle that, where we try to get all the different types of mangoes together in one place, and people can see all these different types of mangoes, and that inspires a lot of people to start growing their own trees. And then with modern horticulture, you don't need a lot of space to get a tree, and in one tree you could have 4 or 5 varieties on one tree producing a lot of fruit. And that's just a fun thing. That's just fun.
So Mark, what makes you the most proud of your work? Like what brings you the most pride about you growing mangoes?
Well, to me, it's just great going through a different neighborhood and just seeing people having a fruit tree and a garden in their yard. And I will often give people a fruit tree as a graduation present or a housewarming gift or a retirement gift. And the funniest one is when as a wedding present, I tell them that's their firstborn. and that tree is their firstborn, and the pride that they have, and they'll send me photos of their tree when it's producing fruit. And so it's to me, that's the greatest thing is just to get some feedback that they're able to accomplish that joy that I have of just having that fruit tree in your yard and having success with it. It's challenging when people aren't having the success with it, but when you turn it around, that's good stuff.
Mark, it's awesome having you on the podcast today. Before we get into our game, because we've got a game to play,
okay,
for big prizes, We're going to do that in just a second. Is there anything else you want to add to this conversation that we haven't talked about?
No,
we covered a lot of territory.
No, I just think I think the big takeaway here, and Robert, you picked up on that one, I think, which is really great, is that, these new experiences, little samples here and there that you savor in the company of some other individuals or by yourself, and just savoring it, little bits and pieces really, really make it fun. And so you don't want to have a lot of one thing. It's more fun to have a little bit of a bunch of different things.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to play a quick game, see if you win the big prizes. Are you ready to play?
Sure.
All right. Well, Mark, thanks for being on the podcast. And stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. Now it's time for our rapid fire 411 game. I'm going to ask Mark some rapid fire questions. And simply, Mark, you choose your preference, like butter or olive oil, riding a bike, hiking, favorite food. So let's get right into this. Just pick your favorite. Olive oil or coconut oil?
Coconut oil.
Pineapple or pears?
Pineapple.
Waffles or pancakes?
Waffles.
Grilled steak or grilled fish?
I can't decide. I'll go both.
Chunky or smooth peanut butter?
Chunky.
Me too. Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day?
Valentine's.
Bacon or ice cream?
Ice cream.
Do you have a favorite flavor?
Mango sorbet.
Ooh, I love it. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Superhero or supervillain?
Supervillain.
Roller coasters or merry-go-rounds?
Roller coaster.
Okay, awesome. And finally, Mark, if you could have a dinner, if you could break bread with anyone, past or present, who would that be and why?
Well, it'd be you. It would be you.
Wow. Wow. Okay, I'm honored. And I want to cook. Can I cook for you?
Sure.
Well, Mark, thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. I hope it's been fun.
It has been. Thank you, Robert.
Well, I can't wait to visit you in Hawaii in the near future.
Sure.
And I will link up all of Mark's info in the show notes, everything about mangoes you possibly want to know, and how to get a hold of Mark and his Makaha mango farm. And hey, Mark, again, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, Robert. Aloha.
All right, take care.
Bye.
If you're loving what you hear in the kitchen, please share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone you know living with diabetes. Type 1, type 2, or my favorite, the type 3, that wonderful, loving support person. Please leave a comment or feedback wherever you listen. It's super important. So I know exactly what you like and how I can make this the best podcast ever. Please reach out to me at my website, happydiabetic.com. Hit the contact link and share a recipe or a comment or a question. We want you to live your best happy diabetic life. Thanks again for listening. And if you're loving the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss one single episode. This podcast is not intended to replace any professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or the Happy Diabetic Kitchen. Always seek medical advice from a registered certified dietitian, diabetic educator, or your doctor. I'm not a dietitian, a certified diabetic educator, or a doctor of any kind. Although I have 3 children, Attila, Dracula, and Frankenstein, that makes me a psychiatrist of sorts. Always consult your medical professional when making any changes to your lifestyle, diet, medication, or anything going on with your diabetes. The Happy Diabetic Kitchen is made from scratch, seasoned with love, cooked to perfection. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is by the Happy Diabetic Kitchen Band, and of course, our kitchen mascots, Scout and Tucker. They love to be in the studio while recording podcast episodes. Thanks, guys, for making this a very special podcast. This year, better than last year. This month, better than last month. This week, better than last week. And this day, better than yesterday. And let me remind you to head over to the website, happydiabetic.com, and subscribe to our free VIP newsletter. It's simple and easy and packed full of cooking goodies. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and let me leave you with this thought. Real cooking is more about following your heart than following any recipe. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and so long for now. And remember, no one loves you more than me.